Hello, everyone. I'm Dominique Johnson-Lindsay, and I want to welcome you to the Active Listener podcast by Lightspeed. As a lifelong learner and the daughter of a Navy veteran who became an elementary school teacher, education and service are in my DNA. This foundation, paired with my love of technology, led me to these conversations with remarkable minds shaping the K-12 landscape. Join us as we amplify these vital voices and explore how active listening remains foundational to educational excellence. Whether you're an educator, administrator, or someone passionate about the future of education, there's something here for you to learn. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Active Listener Podcast. I'm so happy to be back. Today on the Active Listener Podcast, we're joined by Alex and Nicole Schmitt. So they're married music educators who met in college. They've taught together for 7 years. Overall, they both have 15 years of experience, one being a band director and one being an educator and a studio owner, and both advocates for fine arts, equity, recognition, and sustainability. So with that, I want to give it over to you all to introduce yourselves before we kick off our conversation.
I'm Nicole, and thank you for having us. Like she said, we're both music teachers, and I also was a choir director for a long time in the public schools, and we taught in the same school for 7 years. Overall, been doing it 15 years. And yes, now I teach at a local college, and we have young children, so more flexibility is great. And I'm adjunct, and I have a private studio, and kind of just freelance it. And Alex is still at the school.
Yeah, no, Dominique, you nailed it. I'm a high school band teacher here in Roanoke, Virginia. This is the end of my 15th year, which is crazy to think about. But it's been a great ride.
Perfect. So before we start with the actual serious questions, I have to know, what instrument do you play? And then I have to know I don't even know how you say this because I'm not like musically inclined, but like, what's your classification? Like alto, soprano, like tell us, you got to start with that part because all the music people will want to know.
I play the French horn.
I play nothing, but nothing well, but I sing technically soprano, although my voice is lowering as age and singing along with tenors and basses will do to you.
Gotcha. I'm like, I know very little about all this, but I feel like it's an unwritten thing where people need to know. Like, if you're in this world, you kind of need to know. Like, which one do you do? So.
You should make everybody guess at the end. Like, you should take that clip and put it at the end and make everybody guess in the comments. It's a fun game.
It's like a personality test.
Yeah.
Like, there's a personality per instrument for sure.
Really? I love that. Okay. So let's start at the beginning. Tell me just kind of how did you all kind of kick it off as far as like what made you want to do music teaching specifically? Because obviously there's a world of just teaching and, elementary, and then there's the side of just music and more so like being far away from a classroom and doing other things. So tell me why music education?
Yeah, we have very different origin stories.
Different origin stories. I guess mine is the more traditional one. Like I did bands when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. As I was a senior in high school, I was lucky enough to be one of the student conductors or drum majors of my school's marching band. Had a great time. I really enjoyed getting to kind of see behind the curtain and get to know more about like what the day-to-day was like for my high school director, who's still a massive personal hero of mine. Shout out Dr. Newton. As I was kind of getting ready to go to school, kind of that fall of my senior year, I was wondering like, this is really fun. I think I'm pretty good at this. I wonder if you can do this for a career. And it turns out you can. So I started getting a little more serious about music. Up to that point, I enjoyed it, but I hadn't taken it as seriously and started practicing more, took some private lessons, did some auditions, and ended up deciding to study music education in college. And so many years later, I'm still in the biz, as it were.
In high school, I mean, I guess that's where everybody goes back to, because it's when you start to kind of form those interests. But I in high school and before that was more of an athlete. So this is for all those like both, because I tapped into both worlds. And my main thing was soccer, and I spent a lot of time doing that, but I always took choir as my elective. And I liked to sing, but it was kind of like a secret that I liked to sing. And then by my junior year, I was starting to get pretty burnout with soccer because it was just a lot, like a lot. I played club and we traveled a lot and played for the school. And so I always wanted to do the school musical, and the school that I went to was giant. So it wasn't one of those places where you could kind of dip your toe in everything. Like everybody kind of had one thing because the coach or director wanted your full focus on that. And it always conflicted with soccer season. So my senior year, I just did a 180 and was like, I'm graduating and this is my last chance. And I did more choirs and I did the spring musical and had such a blast, and took voice lessons. And when I went to go choose a major, I only applied to one school. Um, I wasn't like heart set on that school, but it was as far away as I could get and be affordable. And it seemed fine to me. So it was Virginia Tech. We're both Hokies. And I remember scrolling through the majors and being like, I like kids and I like singing. Let's try music ed, like not knowing really what that was. And got in my first week and was in like piano and theory and sight singing, and having never took an instrument or anything, I was like, oh man, I think I have to change my major. But I didn't. I had some friends' parents that had watched me through high school say, like, you can do this. And this one helped me with music theory. So that was our meet cute. But I stuck with it and liked it and wasn't really sure about teaching or performing. And then I got paired with an awesome mentor teacher, student teaching. I didn't love elementary student teaching. Like it was fine. It was fun. It's hard. It wasn't like fulfilling to me, but it was fun. But I got paired with somebody who's still one of my best friends, and at the high school level, and I was with her the whole year, and life changing. Like it was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. So with high schoolers. So I kind of just like stumbled into it and then was like, glad it worked out.
Too late now.
Yeah.
No, I love hearing this story just because, each time I ask kind of the origin story for teachers, it's so interesting how people's paths kind of twist and turn till they come back to, but I think this is a good place for me to be. And I think for most teachers of any part of being in the school ecosystem, for them, a lot of it resonates with like being close to the kids of whatever age, but being close to the kids. And we know that that's kind of like this most impactful thing. Like you all are talking about teachers that you experienced long ago. And I feel like it's always good to kind of start with that because that's the foundation for all that, teachers do is like impact on kids basically. So one of the questions I want to ask is, you all have talked together and you're married. So how do you feel like that shaped how you approach like the education, like environment and like your overall purpose? Especially because you two have something that's a little bit similar to each other, obviously not the exact same, but very similar to each other. How do you think that just being together and being married has helped with that?
I think it's definitely helped. I mean, for one thing, we have two kids and they're screwed. I mean, two teachers as parents, like they're not getting away with anything ever. Um, and no, I have loved being in the same profession as Nicole. And I think really as teachers, like there's a lot of it where like if you don't get it unless you get it. So having a partner and a spouse who really understands the struggle as much as anybody else. I mean, when we taught in the same building, there was literally nobody else in the school that understood each other's jobs better. So I definitely think that's made us closer. I know she is an unbelievable teacher and consistently inspires me, and makes me want to be better because she's amazing at what she does. So I enjoy that. I enjoy watching her be fantastic. I think we have a pretty good balance of like not talking about it too much, but definitely talking about it.
Yeah, I think having kids helped.
Yeah, for sure.
When we first got married, that was something we had to work on, was talking about work less.
Yeah.
I can see that. I feel like it's such a big part of your life. And so I feel like naturally anybody does it where you just kind of go home and it's like, oh my God, about this day. But I also feel like the separation point does need to happen, and kids do help with it quite a lot, because you don't have capacity for any other thing but to be all in it with the kids. So I get that point. I do think, though, you kind of brought up a good point just talking about your own kids, and it's relationships, though. So big picture, how do you feel like being a music education teacher helps with relationships? What advice would you give to other educators that are looking to like increase their connection with other students? This is my opinion. I think y'all over in the fine arts have it a little bit easier with like how you develop relationships. And I think kids in the other classrooms, the traditional classrooms, are always looking to mimic that in those classrooms.
So funny you brought this up, because I just read this article last night about students going into the workforce without the skills that they need because the workforce is changing because of AI. So like public schools have put a lot of emphasis, especially in America, on math and reading, math and reading, math and reading, catching up with the rest of the world on math and reading, putting those core subjects first, pushing fine arts to the side and electives and even foreign languages. And then what they're finding is AI is kind of taking those skills. Now we don't need math and data, and because there are computers that will do it. And so the article was saying that fine arts specifically, and specifically music, it highlighted, are not just supplemental, they're critical and should be a part of a child's education requirement, because it equips them with skills they actually need beyond school, beyond their youth schooling. And those skills include looking each other in the eye, interpersonal relationships, working through conflict, being bad at something before you're good at something. Work, the idea that things don't come like this, that you have to put work into it and time into it. Working as a team, following a director, like all these things, they're not just a choir class or a band class, they are life skills. So first, I would say a lot of teachers do, as you said, think, oh, that must be easy. You teach the fun class. It's like, yes, it's a fun subject. However, despite what people think, not all of the students did choose it. And so you have to make them do something, you have to help them do something super, super, super vulnerable. Even if they do like it at home by themselves, you have to make them do something super vulnerable, feel comfortable enough to do that in front of other people, their peers, at a time in their life where they are very self-conscious to do that. And so the relationship that they have with each other and with you is absolutely crucial, or they are not going to do it. I think that's why it's important. I'll let you answer how you would advise other teachers.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, we have a superpower because if everything goes right, we get to see our students several years in a row.
Right.
Like a math teacher probably isn't going to get that. But luckily we do, and that's amazing. I love getting to see kids grow from ninth grade to 12th grade, and just that crazy transformation. But one of the most best pieces of advice I got from a mentor of mine was that as an educator, you have to be interested and interesting. So in terms of building connections with kids, you have to be interested in what it is that they are interested in as well, which is hard because for me as a 37-year-old white guy, like I'm not always into the same things as my students. I know nothing about anime. I know absolutely nothing about it, but I will ask them, like, what anime did you watch this week? Tell me more. And I'll learn all about Naruto and all these other people that I couldn't pick out of a lineup if I wanted to. But being interested in what they're interested in is really important. And not just faking it, like, because, kids can tell when you're faking. Like, you have to ask and be sincere. You can't be looking at your phone. You can't be checking email. Like, you have to stop and have an actual conversation with them every single time you see them.
Show up to their game, show up to their
Yeah,
concerts.
spending time
Yeah.
outside of class, like
Mhm.
going to their activities, their events, that can be hard. But even if it's just like once a year, that makes a big difference. The other part of that is being interesting. Like I always have spicy opinions. I always have hot takes ready for my students. Like I try and be as compelling a character in front of them as I can be. Because I think they attach to that. That matters to them. Not that it's a show necessarily, right? But like I think having something of value to say about many things is really important to building that connection with those students. So I would say interested and interesting are my two tips to teachers.
I love it. And it was very, I think the takeaway often, and Nicole, you kind of alluded to this too, is when something is considered fun, how people view it. But overall, anybody who is on the opposite end, they kind of know like, no, great things are happening here. And so one of the things I always love about having these conversations is the amplification of what work you all are doing. I feel the same way about like any teachers, but I think it's even more unique in these like non-traditional settings, different classes, just because I think people need to know and understand more like what we are missing out on by not emphasizing fine arts and making sure that we have them. I know something that came up in our like initial info call was around being at schools that prioritize the fine arts versus not. And I think Nicole, you probably spoke about this a little bit more. So can you just kind of, I guess, lay out a little bit of that landscape with what it looks like at schools that really kind of care about having fine arts and seeing the value in them versus what it looks like when schools kind of deprioritize it?
Yeah, that's because I taught at a school when I first started that was in a county that I wouldn't say yeah, well they didn't prioritize it, but it was more out of they couldn't just weren't resourced to. So like I walked into a room with it wasn't a choir room, it was like a shared space and no piano and no music and no uniforms and just had to make do and figure it out. And the interesting thing about that school was it was almost like I could do no wrong because the students were just so grateful to have anything. And then I went to a school where Alex teaches and we both taught together that really did emphasize the fine arts. The superintendent was very, very supportive and put that at the forefront. And I had a beautiful room and all the instruments I needed and a nice music library and, a decent budget. And I was like, wow, this is great. But the interesting was the students were so used to it that they didn't know what they had. So there was a lot of teaching. A phrase that I used with them was "we get to," and that was something I always remember them. It stuck with them. They would tell me that years later that they'd go to work now. They're
Mhm.
25 and they have a job and they'd have to remind themselves, I get to, I get to, I get to this idea of being thankful and being grateful and recognizing that it's a privilege to be in this class and to sit in this chair and to have this piece of music and to, be together. So that was kind of how I had to shift teaching, I think. Um, I don't know about I mean, of course it's nice to have the resources. But I do think if you don't have the resources, you tap into a different creativity because you have to.
You said we get to do something and the gratitude. People really don't express a lot of gratitude to teachers. As I kind of stated at the beginning, it kind of plays on teachers' hearts with that because there are a lot of just big hearts in the teaching space. So, can you talk a little bit about what it feels like? Does that feel like a double-edged sword to you with like how schools work, where it's like this very important job, but it feels so thankless sometimes?
Well, the sad bag of walking tacos that I had for my teacher appreciation lunch today was really something. I gotta be honest, Dominique, changed my life. It's the reason I got in the biz. It was
We still have a Tupperware that I got one of
yeah.
my Yeah.
The reason I got into biz was the bad teacher appreciation lunches. Um, no, I think double-edged sword is perhaps a good analogy, because on the one hand, like, you have to have a heart for students, you have to have a can-do attitude, you have to be flexible, you have to laugh instead of cry a lot of times. But it's so easy to be walked over as a teacher. And you're right, it is often unappreciated work. Um, I can count on one hand the number of times I've had an administrator in my room in the past 10 years, which is not the worst thing in the world, but I'm not getting any feedback, positive or negative. There's nobody, hey, you're doing a great job, Mr. Schmidt, keep it up. That is all internal motivation for me. So I'm just not the kind of person that internal motivation has never been a problem with me with my work. Like, that's just something I've never really struggled with. But to be a part of the teaching profession, you've got to have both a big heart and a backbone. I think if you want to be a really, really quality educator, and to push back a little bit against the system, which is broken in a lot of ways. And those two things, the backbone and the heart, often sometimes they work in tandem, but sometimes they tell you to do different things in a specific situation. And that's something I think both of us probably have gotten more in tune with as we've gotten older and we've had children of our own. I think when we were younger, it was a lot easier to say, hey, like, I'm just going to do this. I'm just going to pay the $20 and buy this thing. I'm going to spend the extra hour at school and just do this thing. But that's not really an option now. So it's kind of pushing back on the boundaries that are put on us and saying, no, like, I need these resources and I need them now, and I need you to support me in this way. Yeah.
I have a lot to say about this question. I went into this profession coming from that amazing student teaching experience and just, open heart, full heart, love the kids so much, still do. And we came up to COVID. So our firstborn was 6 months when COVID hit. And that's when it became apparent to me that teachers' big hearts are taken advantage of. So I don't feel underappreciated by the students or the parents at all. I have a whole wall here of thank you notes that they write. They are, that keeps you going. But as a system, as a society, there are ways that we could treat teachers to physically show that appreciation. Everybody's always saying, pay them their money, but truly, like, the amount of hours that we're spending, especially an extracurricular teacher, the amount of hours that we're spending, weekends, overnights, summers, working with the kids, if you break it down hourly, the math doesn't math with what we're paying the teachers.
If there was one thing, this is not your lightning round question, it's just more, I'm curious, outside of money though, because I wholeheartedly agree with you that, like, that is the bottom line. They just need to pay teachers more. The salary does not add up. What are some other ways though that you feel like administration can show that, like, support to teachers in the classroom? Like, what else do you think is more like viable outside of actual salary?
I think listening to teachers more and getting more teacher input is probably the biggest thing. Here's one of my scorching takes for your podcast, Dominique, is that I think a lot of administrators are just bad teachers. I don't think there's a lot of great teachers that are in administration, either at building level or central office level. I don't think there's a lot of them that have mastered the craft of teaching. And so they don't think about it. And why would they if they haven't mastered it, if they haven't grown in that, if they haven't come to love the art of teaching, then how could they possibly know how their decisions affect teachers in the classroom, right? So I think listening to teachers more and taking their input more seriously, making policy considerations at both a school level and a division level would be a massive step forward, because there is a disconnect between the decisions they're making and what actually happens in the classroom. beyond that, I know in our community, there's a massive socioeconomic divide. And that is a real challenge, especially for young teachers to come to grips with. And this is a much bigger, we could do 3 more podcasts on this, but it's like, teachers are so challenged already. When you have a student sitting there that has a Christmas list versus a student that hasn't eaten breakfast for months, that is just a huge divide to bridge in your classroom for 90 minutes a day or 45 minutes a day, whatever. So those would be my 2 things, would be like, at a smaller level in education, administrators have to listen to teachers more. They have to, or else this is not going to get better. This being education. And at a national level, like, we've got to find a way to get these gaps in our people groups down smaller, because it shows up in the classroom every single day. It shows up in test scores. It shows up in concerts. It shows up, all over the news. We see it all the time. Those would be my 2 things.
I often think about what the concerns are in education. And a lot of times when you hear from the outside world, it seems almost like there's just nothing that can be done. Like, that's what it feels like to people. So I was like, well, they have to do something, and they have to do something we all answer to somebody. So we just keep it moving forward in the same way.
Right.
But again, hearing actual teachers, we know that's not true. And so I think some of what I like to pull out in this podcast is what's actually the thought process. Because again, if you're actively listening to a person that's telling you what you need, it's a little bit different to have a conversation about, well, I would just like for you to consider my input a little bit more. That is so different from saying, oh, we need to come up with $40,000 per teacher, which they also need to do by far. But, as a child of a teacher, I'm going to always advocate for teachers to get paid. But I'm like, there are so many other things that lie in between there. And I think the conversation is often minimized to that, like, there's nothing else we can do. And it's like, no, I believe there are things. And you kind of alluded to it earlier, but just COVID, I think COVID really opened my eyes. I did not have a child in COVID. My mom was teaching in COVID. And I feel like seeing the COVID experience, hearing about the COVID experience from other parents, you just got such a wide open lens of like, what is happening in education? Because, and I'm curious, I'll kind of ask you all this, but, we saw what just the general teaching was looking like with reading, math, whatever. But, you all were still at work. So there was still an elective that's happening here that's like, how do you do a thing? You also got to see that people had to manage their own children all day long. And what that looked like, where it's like, we just can't log on for the last hour. It's just been enough for the day. And I felt for people. I did not even have a child then, and I truly understood what that looked like. What did we learn? Like, what did that reveal about where we are? What did it reveal about, how important what you all do is? How important it is for people to be very engaged in how students learn? That was a big thing for Lightspeed, because for us, we had a speaker and microphone system that people felt like was very specific to only if a child has a hearing issue and all this. Then we got in COVID, and people were like, oh, maybe people cannot hear clearly. And it's like, this is happening all the time. The mask is making it worse, but like, this is happening all the time. Kind of looking back after COVID, what do you feel like COVID revealed about the education process that we kind of haven't already talked about, as far as like, what should people be taking away from what they need to input into education today? And that's whether it's a parent or a person administrator.
After COVID, I feel like we had such an opportunity to turn some things that weren't working on their heads. We had such an opportunity to scratch, wipe the board, and people kept saying, once we get back, when we go back to how it was. And I was sitting there kind of thinking, do we want to go back? Do we want to go back to how it was? Was that working? We didn't know really what we know now. We had such a global eye-opening, um, like the testing, that could have been, they adjusted that for COVID, right? They had to, um, and how long a student is on a screen. Like we saw the effects of that. They were not great. Um, but we had to equip students with one-on-one laptops. It became a bragging thing. We have one-on-one laptops. We're going to give everybody hotspots because we had to, which was useful at the time. But then we start to see, oh, now they're losing these laptops. They're breaking these laptops. They're just playing games on them because they didn't buy them, you know? And are the laptops even helping? Or should we be going back to handwriting notes? Like, which way are they actually learning better? Um, these students, at least that were in my class, were literally starved for choir. I missed going to choir. That was the thing I went to school for. That's where my friends are. That's where I got to express myself. That's where I got to do the thing that I love. We could have listened to that, and what they went right back. So I wish that more was learned. I think we learned what isn't great for kids, which is the isolation and the screen time.
Yeah, I think Nicole nailed a lot of it. I think just advocating for our own subject area, just we saw how important fine arts and electives are, and how much connection goes on in those classes that just doesn't go on in other classes, and how key that is for a well-rounded child and their development, as a person, as a student. Crazy idea that there's going to be robots teaching our children in the future, like, is just insane because the human connection and the way that the fine arts and the elective classes feed these kids' souls is really special. And it's something that was desperately missed during COVID. And that is one of the things that we've at least gotten back to that I think is really positive. I think
Mhm.
like Nicole could not have said it better. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff that we had a chance to walk away from in education that just we should have left at the door in March 2020. But one of the things we that has come back is fine arts and elective classes that really bring students together and help them learn what it means to be a better human being.
You know what I think they did during COVID that should have stayed was they changed the teacher's schedule so that there was a day in the middle of the week where they got to have like a work day every week. So essentially, students went to school 4 days a week and teachers had a day to like get stuff done. That was amazing. And I am such a like 4 day week, 4 day week. We need to go to 4 day weeks person across the world. And I think other countries that do that are proving that it can be done. But I think that that schedule was so helpful for teachers and it like rejuvenated everybody.
So I don't want to keep y'all overtime. So I do want to make sure we get our lightning round questions. I have one more question before we end. And that's just, I know Alex, you already kind of alluded to it, but just how do you all personally stay motivated to continue to do the work that you all are doing?
I am competitive with myself, with everybody. I try to hide it so well, but I just am desperate for my students to be a part of the tradition of great American music making in school ensembles. I want them to have a great time, but I want them to experience greatness as well. And I want myself to be a part of that. I want to be a driving factor for that. I'm like selfishly, like I am motivated by wanting to be remembered as one of the best teachers in our state and in this content area. So I've always been hyper competitive. So many of our fights are about competition and just my ego. So like part of it is a me problem, just honestly. And I've matured and I've grown and I hide it better now, but maybe she won't agree, but I just am really competitive and I really want it for my kids. Like I want it for my students to be great at what they do.
I love the work and the students still, but I did get burnout on the public school system, and having children was the main reason I left, but I was feeling it. So, but I still love it, and I love helping teachers too.
One, I love both of those because two different perspectives.
Being motivated by the subject area is really important too. Like I think we both consider ourselves artists, and we teach an art form. And I think that's probably a little harder for a math, a science, an English, a history teacher, whatever. But just to tag on, I still am super motivated to teach my art form. I think that's really exciting.
I love it. Okay, so because I could talk to y'all all day long, I'm going to go into our lightning round. So the first question is, if you could remove one barrier in education, what would it be? And it can be anything. Y'all have talked about so many in this conversation. So I don't know if it's one you already mentioned or something net new.
We both say testing.
I would say 1B, transportation.
That's a good one. That's unique. So testing we've had before. Transportation, that's new.
Yeah, the absenteeism rate at my school is staggering.
Lightning
round, sorry.
And then last question, which I'm so curious to hear this because you guys are musically inclined. What is your favorite sound?
Ooh, favorite sound. The ocean.
I love listening to a good musical theater singer.
Okay, two very different answers. I was so curious. No, you guys shocked me. I did not know what you were going to say. I was so curious. That's like, you could have named an instrument that I'd never heard before. So I'm trying to like, oh my God.
On brand. You were like,
any sound.
Any sound. With that, I want to say thank you both so much for having this conversation with me. I felt like it was so good and so positive and motivating. I feel like, hearing something like this just makes me even more excited about what's to come for education and for kids because they're in good hands with folks like y'all. So I love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
That's all for today's Active Listener. Thanks for tuning in. Share your comments on this episode on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn social media pages. You can visit our website at lightspeed-tech.com to learn more about our mission to ensure every student hears every word. And subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Until next time, let your listening be as active as your learning.